Welcome to the Bikepack Adventures Podcast. I am your host, Chris Panasky. This podcast was created so as to share the stories of bike tours, bike packers, and endurance racers from around the world as they embark on amazing adventures. Through their stories, you'll be able to learn the ins and outs of bike travel. You'll get insight into various countries and cultures, hear fantastic stories of their journeys, and through both mine and my guests' experiences, you'll learn about the pros and cons of specific gear, bikes, and bike setups. If you're new to bike travel and considering going on an adventure, I hope the podcast provides you with that extra little bit of motivation to make it happen. Welcome back to Bikepack Adventures, where we dive deep into the stories behind the pedals, exploring the grit, gear, and glory of bikepacking and human-powered adventure. I'm your host, Chris Panasky, and today's guest is someone who has quietly reshaped how we think about moving through wild places, not just on two wheels, but across water as well. Thor Tingey is the founder of Alpacka Raft, a company that helped pioneer modern packrafting as we know it today. What started as a personal solution to accessing remote terrain has grown into a global movement, blending biking, hiking, and paddling into a seamless, self-supported style of exploration. From Alaska's rugged backcountry to expedition routes around the world, Thor's work has opened up entirely new ways to experience landscapes where rivers are no longer barriers, but invitations. In this episode, we talk about the origins of Alpacka Raft, the philosophy behind packrafting, gear design, and how integrating water into your adventures fundamentally changes the way you move through the world. So whether you're a die-hard bike packer or just curious about adding a paddle to your setup, this one might just expand your definition of adventure. And today, we're really going to explore what happens when you stop seeing rivers as obstacles and start seeing them as part of the route. Thor, welcome to the Bikepack Adventures Podcast. For listeners who might not be familiar with you, how would you describe yourself and long story short, the journey that led you to where you are now?
Oh man, I feel like I'm a dabbler in all things outdoor activity. Um, I've had a lot of different loves in my life. From yeah, I was a passionate mountain biker for 10 years. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid. I backpacking, and I picked up packrafting when I was in my late teens, early 20s in college. It was not a sport that really existed at the time, but there were some people in Alaska that were doing it, and I got
Okay.
kind of pushed in, or not pushed into it, but suggested into it. There was a fund through my college that would give students grant money to go do like a really cool wilderness trip.
Freaking awesome
And
is that?
I got connected with a guy named Roman Dial, who's kind of one of the forefathers of packrafting.
Okay.
And he had been published in National Geographic they took mountain bikes and pack rafts across the Alaska range, 700 miles. And these are like 1994 era Merlin titanium mountain bikes, kind of heirlooms today. And if you think, they probably have like 2.2 tires
Yeah.
and they're riding them through tundra. I don't know how they did that, but they were doing this. So they were mountain biking and then they were pack rafting the river sections. And he was like, you got to try pack rafting. And he set me up with a trip, and the rest is history. That led me down this crazy path.
Nice. So you were on a trip and you were using their pack rafts, and I guess there's something that kind of sparked the idea of lighter weight boats, or like how heavy were the boats, and how did you figure that out?
Yeah, the boats we were using on those trips, they were incredibly light. So Roman tells me, hey, you need a pack raft to go do these trips, but nobody makes one. So there was a company called Sherpa Snowshoe Company. They're actually an East Coast company.
Okay.
And they made a pack raft in the 80s that was it was really a lake boat, but a few Alaskans bought them, and they were doing wilderness trips with them, but they only made a handful of them. And so Roman says, well, you've got to go get something, and the only thing in the market that'll kind of work for what you're doing is this boat called the Settler Trail Boat, and it was $60. You could buy it at Cabela's, you could buy it at the department store. And it really is just a vinyl pool toy that's got a little bit colored green, and it was, meant to go hike into a little lake, and
Right.
catch a trout kind of thing. And, of course, we take it down these rugged Alaska rivers, absolutely wrecked our boats, destroyed them, um, and then got really, really cold because we didn't carry dry suits, we didn't carry
Right.
PFDs,
Right.
no
Right.
safety equipment. So the boat would fill up like a bathtub, and you just shiver in it until one of us was so cold that we kind of started slurring our speech. We get out and make a big fire. We were 21 years old and
It's
didn't
something
know any
only you can
better.
only do when you're a teenager or young.
You can. So the boats were terrible, but the idea of wilderness travel, and I grew up in I'm out, very fortunate. My dad was a climber, my mom was a skier and a boater,
Okay.
and so I grew up in this really outdoor centric household in Alaska. So they taught me everything. We had sled dogs. But we always did these discrete trips. So we do a river trip, or we do a backpacking trip, or we do a climbing trip. And pack rafting was like, oh wow, we can combine all these things together. We can use the boats to go from point A to point B in Alaska, and that's really where the concept. And I'm like, this is amazing. I really want to do this. We did a second so we did two trips in college. One was about a 200-mile trip in the Alaska Range. Second one about a 700-mile trip in the Brooks Range. And again, the boats were terrible. So I came back from those trips. My mom was an outdoor clothing designer and
Okay.
kayaker, and so she's the one that jumped in and said, I'd love to help. Let's make a better one." And so that's where Alpacka came from.
Okay. And figuring out how to make a kayak, like a boat like that, has to be somewhat challenging. Like this would be the early days of like, your seam sealed type PVC type boats,
Ex-
right? And or bags and all these
Exactly.
things.
Yeah, there really nothing existed like it at the time. We didn't invent pack rafting, but we invented the modern pack raft.
Okay.
Um, so you would have large rafts, which are m made with a little bit different technique, and then you have garments which have seam sealing and stuff. But if you remember, late
Hmm.
90s, seam sealing existed, but it wasn't like ubiquitous. Like every jacket now, even the cheap jackets are seam sealed. Back
Yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah.
not everything was. So we, my mom built a jig in our basement out of wood, and then we got like a strip of aluminum and glued it to the wood so it would have a metal base. And because the boat itself, like the seam isn't straight, it's a funny curved seam in order to make
Hmm.
it go around the curve that you see on a boat. And we were in the basement with like a hot air gun, like a heat
Like a
gun.
heat gun. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, with a little nozzle on it,
Hmm.
a fairly high end one, like what they use to actually like make roofs. Like if you make a rubber roof, you go up there and you have one of these heat guns that
Right.
you heat, and that's what we were up there with. And then one of us was holding the heat gun, and one of us had this little roller, and we were rolling away on this little jig to make the original prototypes, and then we would cover all of our errors with aqua seal or some sort of steam sealant. And that's the original boats we made. And
Wow.
and we actually ended up connecting with a company called Jack's Plastic Welding, which is funny. They're only about 50 miles from where we are now, and they made our original boats for us. We came up with the design, but they had the technical
And were they using like
manufacturing.
thermal welds type thing, or is that
Yeah, they're
the?
using seam taping machines, the
Oh,
same
okay.
similar machines to what we do now.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
always kind of wonder what's the like. I know I've seen like online you can order a kit and build
Yep.
a pack raft, and I'm like, man, I guess a hot heat gun, right? Like the and
Yep.
some special compounds or glues or something, and
No, because TPU, thermoplastic polyurethane, has a relatively low to medium melt temperature, so you can
oh,
melt
okay.
melt it together with, you know, a few hundred degrees of heat.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
and so what they do now with those kits is they have like a little soldering iron, and you can order a special nozzle for it that's a flat nozzle. So rather than blowing air into the seam and trying to seal it, you use this little tiny iron to iron your seams.
Mm,
Um,
interesting.
and it's funny, those DIY kits, I've had enough of making DIY pack rafts for
Okay.
one lifetime, even though it was a long time ago. But it's like a lot of the DIY kit things out there. I think it's kind of fun to get to make your own stuff. It'll never be as good as the full commercially made thing
That's
because
right.
the equipment the equipment necessary to make a really, really strong seam is not something that you can do with a DIY iron, but I see the boats that people make and I'm like, yeah, that's what we were doing in our basement 20 years ago and it led this whole project. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. What was the most like at what point did you decide to make Alpacka into a brand and what was like the challenge with getting to that?
So we we made our first prototypes in the winter of 2000 to 2001. And I was a fish biologist for the federal government, so I took one of those prototypes out to my field job in Southwest Alaska, paddled it for the summer, was like, oh, this is way better than the boats we had on these first trips. And then Roman, who had introduced me to pack rafting and some of the other Alaskans that knew about the idea of pack rafting, they heard about us working on these boats. And so they tested out some of the prototypes.
Mm.
And then the fall of 2001 is when we were like, oh, we should really make some of these and let's turn this into a business. So we hired a lawyer and started an LLC, and that's where this is the early days of Google. I got a hold of Jack's Plastic Welding, and they agreed to make our early boats, and it kind of all started from there. But it was a really slow burn. I mean, it was definitely a business out of the basement or the back of the garage kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we, I think that first year we made 50 or 100 boats, and it took us the whole year to sell them. And then the next year we made a few more, but we got lucky because they put pack rafting in the Eco Challenge, and so we were able to get 50 boat sales from that. And it was a kind of just a slow labor of love, slow build. And those early boats, as good as they were so much better than everything before. And the fabric we got right the first time. We still use the same basic fabrics in our
Oh
boats
yeah.
today that we
Wow.
do
Okay.
then, but it's the design that's really evolved over the last 25
And
years.
I presume like that fabric, the thickness of it just depends on what kind of boat you're going for, or is there lighter fabrics, thicker fabrics, or
Yeah, and so we settled on a kind of medium weight for the tubes. That's a 210 denier.
Mhm.
And then, so you've got your base cloth, and that's going to control the durability in the sense of like what its tear strength is. So you can
Mhm.
you can pick a bunch of different um, fibers for that. So you've got nylon, you got polyester, and then you can get into fancy fibers. So that's your base cloth. And the higher the number, the thicker the actual thread that they use to make it. So the
Oh,
higher
okay.
the tear strength.
Yeah.
And then you've also got your thread count. So you think about sheets, and they're like, oh, this is 800 thread count sheets. Well, there's our base cloth has a higher thread count, even than a lot of our competitors use, and that
Okay.
results in um, more rigidity when it's at pressure. And the
Okay.
easiest way to think about, if you think about like it's a weird analogy, but if you think about like a gunny sack, which is a really loosely woven, thick thread, gunny
Yeah.
sacks are really hard to tear, and part of the reason is because the threads are just really loosely molded, and so they tend to align when you pull on them. But
Mm.
they also have a lot of funky stretch in a lot of ways. Whereas when you have a really tight weave, you get really clean shapes and some extra durability that way. But you have some other kind of downsides. So you're always kind of fighting with different things, and then you kind of can pick how much coating, how much polyurethane, in our case, you're actually putting on that. And that amount of coating, more coating means more airtight, but more weight. And so you're always playing a
Okay.
delicate game there. So we've adjusted our coatings over the last 20 years quite a bit, but we originally sat down and came up with a 210 denier body with a 840 denier floor, and we
Mhm.
still make most of our boats out of 210 denier bodies and 840 denier floors.
And like the coating as well, like affects the packability of the boat because it
Exactly.
just like I'm guessing a minor amount of extra coating has a huge impact overall, right?
Yeah. So you might like, you know, a light coating might be anywhere from um, 3 to 4 ounces per square yard, or 3 to 4 mils in actual
Hmm.
thickness. And a heavier coating might be anywhere from like 5 to 8 mils or 5 to 8
Okay.
ounces per yard. And, you know, those play a lot. So our light fabric that we have on our lightest boats for kind of like the most delicate stuff, um, it's the exact same base material. It's the same nylon, just has a thinner coating than our standard weight.
Okay, gotcha. And what
And
makes
you'll
a
save
pack?
a
Oh,
pound
sorry, go
on a
ahead.
boat.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I've seen that. Like, it's just mind blowing how light they are. But like, what else? But how do you make a pack raft? What's fundamentally different about a pack raft versus I don't know some other blow up boat like the one my wife bought on Amazon for $115 that I would never take on a bike.
So the fabrics are a big factor in that, and that's probably the most non-visible thing that separates us from kind of some of the other brands that are out there. We're still sourcing all our materials from the United
Mm.
States. They're quite a bit more expensive, but they have, for whatever reason, they have much higher adhesion, meaning the actual bond between the polyurethane and the nylon, and they are, for whatever reason, much higher color fastness and durability. And so we expect a 20 plus year lifespan out of
Oh
our
wow.
fabrics. So,
Okay,
I mean, people
that
can
long,
wear
eh?
them out in a few years if they really, really beat their boats hard, but we still have boats that are 20 years old that come back for
Yeah, we've
service.
used our raft like 3 times. I think it has a slow leak.
Yeah, so that's a big factor is the materials we're using.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
the construction methods, there's cheap ways to do things and there's expensive ways to do things. We're always trying to like find the best way to do things that you know at the most affordable cost. Our boats are
Hmm.
not cheap. They're on the high end of the price spectrum, but we like to think you get what you pay for. And but a big some of that factor is the design and just the sculpting, for lack of a better word, the patterning that goes into the shapes that we have. A lot of the boats that you see out there that may look just like ours, you know, whoever's making them is kind of like cut some corners in terms of like some sharper edges and stuff like
Mm.
that, and that results in a boat that just doesn't perform as well in the water.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're kind of like always fiddling with that. And then we really, our seams are all, we sew them and then we seam tape them twice, and that gives us the strongest possible seam. But that, you know, that's somebody else that might not sew them or seam tape them only once, you know, that's 1/3 less steps than we do. So they can actually save a lot of cost that way.
That makes sense. Yeah. And is there a big design change when you start thinking about bikes and bike like pack rafting in terms of like how you make your
Yeah.
boats so that they can live on the handlebars or on the top of a rack or whatnot?
Not so much in terms of the boat and how it would live
Okay.
on the bike, but how the bike lives on the boat.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So the interesting thing is bike rafting is one of the oldest forms of pack rafting. I mean, go back to this. I got introduced to pack rafting by Roman because he had done a bike rafting trip. And
Right.
this is before the days of modern pack rafts, before the days of, I don't even think a fat bike had been invented then. Yeah. I mean, it certainly hadn't because that's what he would have brought,
Yeah, yeah.
you know? And so there are guys taking um, old school mountain bikes across the Alaska wilderness 40 years ago with pack rafts. So, and so we've had people wanting to take bikes with their boats since the first one we made. Um, and the the original boats that we made were kind of, we call them stubbies because they were just kind of, they looked like a miniature raft. Now they look much more kayak shaped, and so they track better and do everything. But the old little
Mm.
miniature rafts, you could, they were, because they were wide like a raft and had a wide front end, you could stick a bike up there pretty easy. You were very cramped, like you just had this really short like paddling stroke. Well, in 2018, we decided to make a bike specific boat, and that was the caribou. And what we came up with is putting an extra panel of fabric in the front of the boat to widen the front end. And it did two things. One, it stabilized it because when you have a narrow front end and you put a bike on there, a bike's a wide object. It's a very awkward object.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if it's up there, it would tend to, if you misweighted at all, it would like want to tip you over to one side or another. And it wouldn't flip you, but you just felt kind of like a little unstable when you're on the boat. And so adding that extra panel up the front really stabilized the platform that the bike could sit on. And the other thing that it did is we kind of added, it's kind of like we jokingly named it out of something from the ski world, like, or they have like early rise rockers on modern skis to help them float in powder. We
Yep.
came
Yep.
up with, we had late rise on the rocker on our bow, and that way when you put weight on the bow, it didn't tip the boat forward.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
these pictures of bikes and backpacks on boats from before when we came out the Caribou, and when they're sitting on the shore, the boat's sticking straight up in the air because it's pushing all the rocker down. And
Right.
so when
Right.
we came up the Caribou, now when you put the weight, the center of gravity is behind the rocker point, and so you still have some bow up front, so you can clear waves and not get water in the boat, but it's a really nice stable platform.
Okay. Yeah, and I was just looking at the website here. I have the Caribou in the Expedition. You can see that the Caribou is much like more of a not round, but
Yep.
more of a boxy profile at the front, right, as opposed to pointy.
Yes, it's specifically designed to carry large, unevenly shaped objects on the
Mm.
front. Bikes, packs, animals, things like that, you know.
Okay. And then attaching it to your bike, I guess, is just when it's in its bag. The bag has little loops and stuff for strapping into harnesses,
No,
or
you can just roll the boat up and run any kind of ski strap around the boat's going to handle it.
oh yeah, okay. So you don't need a bag
Yeah,
per se. Like that's a
you don't. No, you don't need a bag per se. The only difference is you will want to roll the boat up in a way so that you're keeping this, and this would be the normal way to roll it up for a bike,
yeah.
so that you're keeping the floor, the heavy duty 840
Mm-hmm.
part that's not inflated, you're keeping that on the outside because
Yeah, that
that's
makes sense. Yeah.
built to take the abuse. Whereas if you do end up with the tube fabric, which on the Caribou is lighter, because bike rafting is generally not as, you're not
Yeah.
doing whitewater and stuff like that. Then if you get that kind of pinched in, it'll be fine for most rides, but if you're riding, quite a ways on kind of washboardy surfaces where you're just getting that kind of vibrational rubbing on it, you can put a hole in your boat.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like and the material handles being folded well, or is it meant
Oh
to?
yeah,
Yeah. Cool.
yeah.
That's really interesting.
Just like a jagging stuff it. You can do anything with it. It's really good that way.
Do you have a design, something you decided to do in a design that was like your proudest design design decision? God, I can't say that word. Something that you're like, man, this was awesome. Like, and people keep coming back to you about it.
Hmm. You know, probably the best one we've had is, and it's funny, the the history is a little interesting here. So thigh straps are you can wear thigh straps in the boat in order to give yourself a lot more control,
Okay.
especially when you're running whitewater. It's a critical element of it. Now, the history of thigh straps are really interesting
I've never even heard
because
of these things, so this is all new to me.
yeah. So our original boats didn't have thigh straps. And in 2008, some of the old school Alaska crowd started gluing their own thigh straps into these big padded straps that came from the inflatable kayak raft world.
Okay.
So they started gluing their own attachments in the boat and installing these thigh straps. And at the time, they were a really vocal group online, and this is pre-Insta, Facebook's around, but this is really like blogs and forums and things like that, not Instagram, because it wasn't around. And so these guys became incredible advocates for thigh straps. And my mom was running the business at the time, and it was her sole source of income, and still really, really small. I think she had 4 employees. And she was pretty nervous about these thigh straps potentially being an entrapment hazard because they just have two
Oh,
points. You attach them.
right,
And so
right.
she saw all this hard whitewater these guys were pushing and doing. And on the one hand, you're like excited they're doing it. And the other hand, you're like, I don't want to encourage people to do this. I don't want somebody to die.
Right.
And then claim that it was our fault for having these bad thigh straps in there. And so she really kind of like pushed back on them hard. And it created this big kind of like undercurrent of confrontation in the community where the people who were using the boats were like, Alpacka's not on board, they're not listening, all this other stuff.
Mm.
This goes on for like 5, 6, 7 years,
Oh,
and
wow.
where there's
Okay.
this kind of
Tension.
process where people are like, you need really, you need to put thigh straps in boats. And we're like, we're not comfortable with doing that yet. So my mom, who's this really, really brilliant sort of designer and creative person, and sometimes she will try to reinvent the wheel, and it's a good thing, but sometimes it's also too complicated. So she comes up with these new knee cups in this boat called the Alpacka Lips in 2014, and they were they were like way ahead of their time and hard to fit. And so that boat ended up being kind of unpopular because there's too much going on in it. But it was the first time anybody had ever come up with the idea of not just attaching a point up by your hip and a point by your ankle with a single strap. Because when you just have that single strap and you pull against it, your knee can really move a lot without the
R-
boat moving a lot. And
Right.
this new knee cup she came actually attached additionally to the top of the boat. So when you pulled your knee, the boat came with you. So you were at a much more aggressive connection with the boat. And she was really trying to copy what happens in the kayak world, where you have a hard plastic knee brace or cup, and that's what makes kayaks really engaged for the paddle.
Mm.
And so, this was her, how can I create a kayak knee cup with fabric? Way too complicated, couldn't get your knees fit into it, like 45 different straps to try and get adjusted. Didn't work. Well, the coolest thing about this is one of the great things about product development and invention is sometimes you have to make something really complicated and bad before you get the elegant, simple, good version. You never
Hmm.
get to the final version on the first, or you rarely do. And in this case, same thing. These thigh straps are like, oh, bad. But then we sat down there and said, well, what if we just made these simpler? And we came up with this simple strap that was the same concept, but it had two more points of attachment, and it wrapped around your knee and up over the top, and you could adjust it forward and back and adjust the length. And we came up with those. We tried them, and we're like, suddenly all of our testers were like, these are incredible. They're perfect. This is a huge leap forward in performance. And we actually ended up patenting those, and they're the arguably the biggest, most important thing we've ever put in one of our boats. And that was
And do
really
they
cool that it's just a
are
simple
they in
little piece of
all
fabric.
kinds of boats, or is it just is it something you add on if you need that?
So they're in all of our high performance line of boats, so individual boats and stuff like that. So they don't come standard, and they're not
Hmm.
the bike rafting Caribou isn't pre-configured for thigh straps because a lot of people bike rafting aren't doing that kind of whitewater.
Yep.
But like the Narwhal, which is when it was introduced in 2017, was like the highest performance boat we'd ever come up with, and now it's kind of like our more entry level, novice, intermediate whitewater boat. That boat's a really great bike rafting boat too, because it's a really nice
Yeah,
stable
it looks really
platform.
nice. I just have to scroll down to it.
Yeah, and we can put the extra bike rafting attachments on it, and then you've got thigh straps, and now you've got a true jack of all trades. You can go take it on a bike rafting mission. You can go take it to the Arctic. You
Oh,
can take it
cool.
on your local whitewater run. So that's our kind of bread and butter quiver killer, do everything boat.
Sweet. And I guess like a lot of times people, love to say like, oh, there's no such thing as failure, it's learning. And although it's a weird statement, I mean, part of failing at creating something is where you learn and figure things out, right? Like it's things have to not people have to not be happy with certain things in order to to really dive into it and then figure out what has now been the ultimate
Oh yeah,
solution.
100%. Got a dog once in.
I know that feeling.
Yep. So, a lot of we've had a handful of projects over the years that the base project itself has never really been that successful, but all of the things we learned in doing that project spun off to our most successful innovations.
Right.
Just going back to that Alpacka, that whitewater boat, like most of the features you see on modern day pack rafts came out of that project, even though the Alpacka itself was highly unprofitable.
Oh, okay. And I guess like a lot of things too is like as new ideas come to fruition and you get new things happen that are really cool, like they just get backwards compatible into the next generation of the other boats, right? So maybe there's something that's
100%.
really cool you figure out on a new boat and you're like, well, let's throw that in the narwhal as well because it makes sense. Like, why wouldn't we sell the next version to have this thing, right?
Yep. You kind of leap these 3 steps forward. You see a lot of brands do this. You kind of leap these 3 steps forward with one new model, and then you trickle the technology from that model back into your other models and let them catch up. And then
That's right.
You get another new one that leaps forward, and then you catch up with everything else.
Technology is the same, right? Cell phones, everything, and
everything.
They all do that. Yeah, exactly.
Bikes. You'll see like some, new fancy thing comes out, and it always comes out on the highest end model because that's what they've been.
That's right.
Pouring all the R&D money in, and then it's like a couple years later, the entry level model has the same, basic technology in it.
Yeah, I mean, like I think if you look at like I don't know what's the newest SLX group set. Do they still make your SLX? Whatever it is for Shimano is probably better than XTR was 10 years ago.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like in the current like 12-speed XT is just really, really good stuff. And you're like,
and that wireless one, it shifts like the thing can walk. Yeah.
Yeah, and it would have been 15 years ago. It would have been the most out there radical. Nobody's ever thought of this. I still remember when pretty well when the original XO groups set, or no, it was the XX, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was the first one by in like 2009 or 10. And
everybody's like, "This is the stupidest thing ever. Why would
the
anybody
whole
want
internet
one
went
bike?"
crazy. You can't get rid of the front derailleur. That's not possible. And now, like even on my gravel bike, I have a front derailleur on my gravel bike. My wife doesn't, and I always prefer to ride hers because I ride mountain bikes. And I'm like, I hate my front shifter.
Even I remember when I was buying it had to be 2011 or 12. I was buying a mountain bike in Malaysia, and I was going to buy it with 29-inch wheels. And my buddy in Canada was like, "No, man, that's the stupidest thing ever. Why would you do that?"
And now you can't even finding a bike without 29-inch wheels.
Yeah, exactly. Is there what are some of the most like inspiring or creative uses you've seen of pack rafts? Like ways that people use them that maybe you didn't quite expect?
Oh man, that's a
skydiving into.
Yeah, it's funny. A guy we worked with in the whitewater realm, Tyler Bratt, has started doing really cool paragliding missions with them.
Oh, no
I
way.
never really thought about that. Like, and he lives in Hood River area in Oregon, and he'll go out and the chutes, like the Eastern Oregon has all these big canyons, and he'll go out there and before he was always like, man, it was like brutal. I'd always want to go like paraglide in the chutes because you can drive up to the top and it's like 1,800 feet down into the bottom of the canyon. But he's like, I don't want to paraglide down in the bottom. I got to walk out. That's like the worst. But now he brings his pack raft in a pack and he goes paraglides down, drops in, and then he's on the Deschutes River and he has a relaxing like 2-hour float back to the highway.
Oh, that's so cool. And then you just got to get somebody to pick you up or hitchhike a ride back to your car.
Are super cool. It's funny. So Roman, who I was talking about, got me into it, sent me, I've got to respond to it, an inquiry this week from two college kids who are like doing pretty like out there geology and climate research science on their own. And they are circumnavigating Baffin Island this summer, and they want our new
Oh, wow.
flatwater boats to do it. And I'm just like, that. I thought I did a cool trip 25 years ago, going 700 miles across the Brooks Range, and that's not an 1,800-mile circumnavigation of
Yeah.
Baffin Island as a 20-year-old.
Yeah,
So I think that's pretty darn cool.
I've heard of people like kayaking around Vancouver Island, which is massive as well. But
Yeah,
pack rafts might be a nice light alternative to doing something like
yeah. One of the stranger ones is another one that is actually happening this year. There's a guy who reached out to us, and he is kayaking. Oh, I might get this wrong, but I believe it's from Greenland to Iceland.
that. What?
Yeah,
Nuts.
so he's not pack rafting from there. He's
Yeah, yeah.
sea kayaking, but he needs to be able to sleep. And so he's getting one of our biggest boats, and we're putting a custom top on it so he can turn it into like essentially
Yeah, because when you see those like ocean-worthy kayaks, like they have a roof basically. Like
yeah, but he's just on a regular kayak, and so
yeah.
he's gonna bring a pack raft of ours. And so
Oh.
then when he goes to sleep, he's gonna pull it out, blow it up, and it's got a roof cover, so it turns into like a little coffin. And then he's got like some way to ballast it so it won't flip in waves.
Sure.
And then he's going to tether it to his kayak, crawl into it, and go to sleep in the middle of the strait. And I'm like,
That's crazy.
I've thought about some things, but that you can count me out on crawling into a packraft coffin to try and
Yeah.
sleep in the middle
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
ocean.
Do you have any memorable expeditions that you've gone on with the Alpacka rafts or any of your
So many
so
cool
many?
ones.
Any good one you want to
Uh,
share?
yeah, the first two were obviously like profound life changers for me. My wife and I have done some really um, cool trips over the years. I still love the big landscape traverses in Alaska. Um, they're my favorite, especially where you get to go new places. There's a lot of, as packrafting's grown, there's a lot of what I would call trade routes. People just, know the route and
Yeah.
do it every year. But I've been to a handful of places where, I don't know if we were the first descent of that section of river, but I doubt that 5 people ever have been in that section of river. And
Okay.
it's just kind of cool to see things for the first time. And my favorite thing about that is I love not knowing what I'm gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a map, and now it's funny because these are the original trips I did 25 years ago. We had paper maps, paper USGS quads, and we
Yeah,
were working
yeah,
on
yeah.
that was our only indication of what was ahead. And now I've got like satellite imagery, Google Earth, recent snowpack. There's so much resources, and so you're like, oh, around this corner, it looks like there's going to be some whitewater, even if it's a brand new section. And I kind of sometimes like to be like, let's just go and find out what's here and
Let's just,
see what's going to happen.
I was going to say ride, but let's just float and figure it out.
Yeah, just float or hike or whatever section
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that we're in. I really love that exploratory side of pack rafting for sure.
Yeah, it seems like we were kind of touching on it before we started recording. And, like you said, it's starting to get really popular as well. And I think I feel like when UCI got involved in gravel, more people went to bikepacking, and then now bikepacking is getting pretty mainstream. And
That's
there's so much stuff out there and so much high quality gear that some people are like, all right, there's too many people. What can I do that not everybody's doing? And then now
yeah.
it's like, oh wait, what if I get a boat and I get the hell away from everybody? Like,
Then I could get further away from people.
yeah,
No, that's absolutely true. And as a brand, I think the ability to go do those kinds of trips that's why we like to. That's why I started doing it. That's why the people that work here go pack rafting. And so we've always tried to walk the fine line between like promoting the sport and promoting the brand, and trying not to reveal, you know, the I'm not going to say the best places because I've been so many amazing places. I've had some bad trips too. I
Right.
think the joke is sometimes you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find a prince. I don't think it's quite that bad, but if you're trying new trips that aren't documented, sometimes you'll be like, this was a terrible idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
But
even something like somebody's put together and they say, "Hey, I got this route for you," and you're like, "Let's go try." And
let's go
next thing
try
you
it. It's
know,
gonna be great. Like,
um,
this is not great. This is really bad. But
yeah, I
being able
do.
to link those things together, bikes and boats, is pretty cool.
I feel like maybe like in the pack rafting world, a lot of people they want that solo time. They really want to get away from everybody. Like, do you think that because of that, people are a little less open to sharing their routes, or is it still pretty flowy and like people are quite willing to share? They want to keep some things to themselves more.
Well, it's culturally really interesting because I feel like I'm 48, and I feel like in the 90s, the only way you could find anything out about a route was like direct personal knowledge, or it was like written up in a magazine or a
Yeah.
guidebook. That's it. And then you kind of 2000s, you kind of have forum-based recommendations, but
Yeah, maybe I
now
don't know.
it's
I don't know what there was in the 2000s before
I
like
think it was
Google
like
came around.
forums. I think you could
Yeah.
go onto forums, and people would publish routes in forums for whatever you're doing, but I don't even think of the 2000s, even though YouTube was around, I don't think of YouTube or Facebook as being
Hmm.
great sources for like those kind of things. But
Yeah,
now
that's
it's
true.
like people who are young today have been raised in a totally different culture, and I get it. I see that there must, I know that there's got to be, I'm going to use the word addiction, but there's also like, there's a feedback loop that comes from sharing where you're going on social
Mm.
media and then having people kind of like
Yeah, maybe like some kind of
like
like
it.
endorphin hit on that.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so people are way more sharing about where they go now. And in some ways, that's fine. That's the new culture, and people want to go things. But there's other places where I'm just, I try to be more protected. It's funny. I really love fly fishing, and over the years, um, I've gotten lucky with a friend or two, and we've found some pretty incredible locations that are um, very undocumented. And it's funny because I have a business that would benefit from documenting these locations and what you can do.
Right.
And my friend has a business that would definitely benefit. And we're both super, super like, nope, it's not worth it. We're not saying you know, not
This one
saying a
stays
word
in our
about this.
pocket. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like we might um, refer to it in things like this, but we're not like sh definitely not sharing locations, and
Hmm.
not even really sharing regions. Well, what's funny is a dealer of ours actually does much the same thing, and just this last year he found one of our locations.
Oh yeah.
And it was funny because he sent me some pictures, and I was just like, that's our spot. I called him, and
You're
we
like,
like
do not
laughed back.
tell anybody.
And the first thing he said when I told him, I'm like, I'm calling about da da da, and he was like, well, we can never tell anybody about that place. And I was like, okay, thank you.
Nice.
So,
Yeah,
and
a
I don't want to be a
little piece of
gatekeeper,
heaven
but
on earth. You got to keep that a little bit quiet.
yeah, and but what I realized after the fact that's really cool about it also is we both found this place separately, and both had even though like we found it in different years and neither of us was actually the first or whatever,
Hmm.
we both had this experience of like feeling like we discovered something.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's important as a brand to try and preserve that discovery. And that's why
Mhm.
we don't share as much as like the feeling of discovering a place is really cool, even if you're not first.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. You won't be first. You won't be the last, but
Yeah,
you might feel like
n
you were because you didn't find it on a online
exactly.
forum.
You're
Yeah.
like, oh wow, what did we run into here?
Are there
I really
any
like that.
bike pack rafting routes that like is there a bike pack rafting route that made you think like this is the future? This is just amazing. Like people need to know about this route. Um,
You know,
or something that people could plan if they're like, I want a bike pack raft. Oh, there's this really cool route in this state, this country, wherever.
so the there's a handful of published ones in the desert Southwest here that are all really, really cool. You know, they're spring routes, they're fall routes, but the cool thing about here is you've got so much historic, like uranium mining activity that you've got
Mm.
gnarly old Jeep roads out in the middle of the desert everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Couldn't be better on a fat bike. And then they're intersected by big gnarly canyons in the Colorado Plateau. And so if you have a
Mm.
bike, it's just a matter of sitting down with it and trying to link roads with a mix of the Colorado and Lake Powell and stuff. You have to negotiate around a few national parks because you can't have bikes in there. But there's some really cool ones that are pretty well published in this in this region. To me, the one that's the sort of I've never done it, but if there's a route that if I die without doing it, that I will have regrets of not doing it, it's the Lost Coast in Alaska.
It's called
And
Lost
it's
Coast.
the Lost Coast. It's well published, so I'm not giving any secrets that it's,
Right.
out there. If you Google it, you will find plenty of information in it. The reason nobody does it is because it's really, really hard.
Ah,
Um, but it's also really, really rewarding. I can't remember the exact mileage. It's like 250 miles from Yakutat to Gustavus.
hmm.
So it's in Southeast Alaska. You're out on the coast. There's almost no settlement in that entire
Right.
span. So you're riding fat bikes on big black sand beaches, looking out at the Pacific Ocean with no people, and it's a lot of riding. And then the pack rafting is intimidating. That's why it doesn't get done as
Right.
often because you have to cross. You have a bunch of river crossings because there's a lot of rivers, and then you have to cross. I believe it's Icy Bay, which you have huge tidewater glaciers that are coming down and forming this bay, and then so you've got icebergs everywhere, and then you've got huge tide flow in and out, pushing in and out of the ocean.
Yeah, that
And
sounds pretty
I think
good.
it's a 4 or 5 mile crossing. So you got to time it. Like you want to time, so you're going, you know, you'll start paddling. I can't remember exactly how it's done, but you basically want to be paddling, leaving when the tide is sort of like on
At
the
its
last
highest.
bits of going
Yeah.
out, so you don't go out to the ocean, and
Oh,
then you're
okay. Right.
paddling through the swing, and then you're trying to make sure as it's coming back in, dodging icebergs and all this other stuff. So, you know, it's not a beginner trip for sure, but it's
Yeah.
as wild as you ever get. And I believe a section. There's another glacier that actually comes direct down to tidewater on the coast, and sometimes it's receded and you can just walk right by it, and
Okay.
sometimes it's all the way on the water and you have to load your pack raft on, or your bike onto your pack raft, go through surf and get into the ocean proper and paddle for 5 miles past the front of the glacier. Like really, really, really amazing trip.
That would be pretty spectacular, actually. Just like, I mean, I'm sure it's hard as hell, and you definitely would have to be an experienced paddler, an experienced biker, probably for all this
Yeah,
area. But that's
but I think,
big boy goals.
yeah, but 20 years after it was first done, it's still like an out there aspirational trip for anybody that does it. In
Yeah,
fact,
yeah.
Eric Parsons, who owns Revelate, I believe, was on maybe the first trip.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. So
If you don't mind me asking, when like you've created bike or pack rafting or bike pack rafting maybe routes, like do you start with roads or rivers, like route, land or water? What's the main consideration when you're trying to figure out a pack rafting trip?
It's that's a really good question, and that's probably the biggest evolution in the sport.
Okay.
So the original trips that we started on, and even the first year of alpaca boats, these were land trips where a water element was a necessity. It's like, oh, we have to get across this river, or we have to get down this section, so we're going to
Right.
bring a raft to do that. As the rafts got more and more performance oriented and more comfortable on the water, that is completely inverted to the point
Oh,
where
okay.
today everybody's looking, how can I walk the least to get the most floating?
Right.
So that's 180-degree shift over 25 years in terms of how people look at landscapes with a pack raft today versus
Hmm.
in 2002. Bikes is a little bit different in my opinion, because in the biking situation, the bike section is usually still more efficient than the boating section. So when
Yeah.
you're
In
walking, you're
yeah.
like, oh, I got this heavy pack. As soon as I can get to the river, all my gear goes in my boat and we're relaxing and having a great
That's
time
right.
and giggling and having nice camps. Whereas when you're biking, you're like, I'm cruising along on the bike and now I have to figure out how to put all my bike gear and my bike on my boat and go through this section. And that's not so. I think when you're biking, the focus is still on how can we get the most biking done.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would be
And
thinking like, how can I connect the most single track sections without having to ride all the gravel in between?
exactly, or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
where you can
Yeah.
connect these two things. I and so that's why I see the Lost Coast is the famous one, but remote coastline paddling is kind of like the out there exploratory
Oh,
part
okay.
of bike rafting
Yeah,
because
when you were talking about the Lost Coast, it made me think of like, imagine how cool it'd be like to pack raft and mix in either biking or hiking and stuff along like Greenland's coast, right? Like just
yeah, all of those kinds of places like you just and now with modern satellite mapping, you can get a much better sense of like, are we looking at 100 miles of hard sand beach,
mm-hmm.
or are we looking at unrideable, you know, baby head size
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
cobble? And that's like
Yeah,
no fun.
that makes sense. What's the transition like between riding and paddling? Like, you know, inflating the boats. Like what kind of how long does it take? What's the general flow?
You can do it efficiently in under 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
You know,
That's not too
yeah,
bad then.
you can do it if you want to go really fast. You can go much faster than that. But in general, like you're getting out of the boat and you're stretching your legs out and drying off and taking off your wet gear and slowly packing it all up into your bike bags and then, but just the physical act of deflating and rolling your boat up so it can fit on your handlebars is just a couple minutes.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I would say it actually transitions faster to the boat because in that case, you're usually, you've already got dry gear on, so you're just throwing on your paddling gear and then inflating the boat, which just takes a couple minutes. And then the best way to load a bike is to remove both wheels. So the frame goes on first, gets lashed
Oh,
down.
okay. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, and you have to make a decision about whether you can sometimes leave the rear wheel on, but it does stick out fairly far. You have to make a decision about whether you want to run the fork facing forward or the fork facing at you. I like the fork facing at me, even though the pedal and the chainring can sometimes be in the way. Um,
Right.
the reason I like that is then the bike doesn't have anything sticking out to like catch on a stick or something like that on the edge. Whereas
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
turn
yeah.
it around, it's really nice for paddling, but you definitely have more awkward objects sticking forward. Regardless, you've got awkward objects, but you lash the frame down to the boat, and then the wheels kind of like overlap stack on top of the frame.
Oh, okay.
and you just kind of like
Kind of like the way you'd
you
stick it
just
in a
see
bike
over them.
box or something like that.
Yep, exactly,
And then you just use some like rubber volley straps to strap it down to the connectors type
exactly.
thing, or yeah.
Yep, and we actually the Caribou is actually we use a what we call strap plates rather than grab loops on the front of the Caribou, and they're actually rotated specifically to accommodate a bike frame.
Are they like the like the little round pucks looking things I see with like
Yep, with
that you
the
could
two little
weave a you could weave
slits in
a
them.
yeah,
The strap goes under there, so you get direct connection. Because when you use it on a grab loop, it's fine, but it definitely
right.
doesn't anchor straight down. Whereas that little strap plate, um, um, three of them, the two front ones and I can't remember if it's the left or right, are oriented parallel to the
Oh
boat,
yeah,
and
that's right.
so
Yeah, yeah, it's the right one.
that
Yeah.
way the straps go around they go around the top tube and they go around the
Oh.
chainstay because they're all in the same direction. And then the
Hmm.
other one is rotated 90 degrees because it's going to go around the fork, which is perpendicular to the
Right.
other tubes.
Okay, cool. How strong are those things?
Pretty strong. You can
Okay.
pick the whole boat up with it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, like, it just looks like a little couple little slots in some rubber fabric.
Yeah, that's pretty tough fabric.
Yeah. Okay. Um, and then the unpacking. How do you carry everything you need? Like, I mean, there's the boat, there's the paddle.
Yep.
Um, is it how much space does that take?
The boat and the paddle don't take up a lot of space, and our really light paddle, like the Aquabound Whiskey, will roll up with the boat. So you can honestly get the entire boat with the paddle all roll up in one package and mounted on
Oh,
your
okay.
handlebars. And it's about the size of a medium-sized tent. It's probably like, yeah, medium-sized
Okay.
tent. Um,
Yeah.
the
Probably wouldn't fit very well in like 40 centimeter drop bars, but if you have like something
yeah,
wider, you're probably okay.
yeah. The challenge that you run into with, and this is why, like, we don't have as many like high performance boats for bike rafting, is because your helmet, now that's going to be cross compatible. It's not a whitewater helmet, but it's totally
Yeah.
fine for paddling. But suddenly you're like, well, am I bringing a PFD? Now, as the brand, I have to say, yes, you should always wear a PFD in there.
Right.
I didn't wear a PFD on a lot of my trips. I still think that safety safety is far more about situational awareness than it is about equipment. I've
Hmm.
believed that from the beginning. If you are situationally smart, you don't need any equipment. If you are situationally stupid, no equipment will save your life, kind of thing.
And if you get
Um,
one of those PFDs that are like the little rubber,
yeah,
the floating yellow duck one, they don't take a lot of space to pack up
yeah,
this
you could do something like that, but so you're gonna have to
couple
make
water
these.
wings.
Yeah, you're gonna have to make these trade-offs. I mean, you don't want to go run anything more than class two whitewater with a bike in
Right.
the front of your boat anyway, because the bike itself is going to make the boat more top heavy and dangerous if you do flip. So you can get away with a lighter, smaller PFD depending on the river and the conditions
That's
on it.
right.
And it's like, are you bringing a dry suit? It's like, well, if you're biking in the summer in the desert or you're probably fine with that one. But if you're on the Lost Coast, you probably want a dry suit because if you
Yeah,
go in the
that makes
water,
sense.
you're not going to make it if you don't.
Hmm.
So that's where that extra gear starts to add up. It's like, um, but I think that's just a factor in sort of like deciding what water you're going to do.
Yeah, and I feel like if you're going to go bike pack rafting, you're probably not looking at a super minimalist setup in terms of like I'm only carrying a bivy bag or like you have like nothing of
Yep.
everything.
Yeah.
You're probably going to have a little bit more of a rugged bike that you're going to
Yeah.
have space to carry this
Exactly.
thing, right?
Exactly.
Because you're already accommodating the fact that you're going to have extra weight.
Yeah,
Um,
we see the vast majority of people who are going bike rafting are doing it with fat bikes because it allows them to get in more rugged situations.
mm,
But there are definitely people using more traditional um, bike packing situations on just sort of for dirt roads. And then the one that I haven't really done much of, but there's like a bunch of pretty cool urban bike rafting out there.
Okay,
So
what
it's
is
not
that?
so.
Just
For
like through random
example,
cities?
yeah, like most major cities in the world are built around large waterways.
Right.
And so, um, just I'll give you a couple of examples. I lived in Portland for 10 years. You got the Willamette River coming right through town. You got the
Yeah,
Columbia,
yeah.
joins the Columbia, and then the Clackamas River is a tributary of the Willamette on the outside of town. My wife and I jumped on our road bikes, like full-on roadie kits, and rode 35 miles out through all the Portland suburbs on the beautiful bike paths and everything like that, out to the Clackamas River. We had little backpacks with just our pack rafts on the back of it, and we jumped into Clackamas and floated all the way down to Oregon City through like this beautiful farmland, had a picnic, and then rode home.
Oh, that's cool.
It was super cool, super fun, and
Could also be a really great way to like bike travel when, like nobody loves riding through big cities. So if
yep,
you're riding and you reach London, England, you're like, let's just float through the city because there's
let's go
canals
cruise on
everywhere.
that.
Or let's float through Czech or Prague or something, right?
Yeah, we the other one we did, which was a totally I don't know how much. I think you need experience. I don't know how much. It's very cool, but it's also intimidating.
All right.
So we went to New York. We stayed in Times Square, uh, and we rented city bikes. The terrible, like
Yeah, yeah.
super uncomfortable city bike. But we put our pack rafts in our back. We rented city bikes, rode from Times Square down through Manhattan, over the Brooklyn Bridge, and then dropped the city bikes, and then popped down and jumped in the Hudson, or no, the East River, um, on an outgo or incoming tide, and paddled up the East River to somewhere in Harlem, and then jumped back on the city bikes and rode back home. And um, I'm a pretty good paddler, and my wife's a pretty good paddler, so we were fine. But the East River was definitely like an intimidating place to be in a little tiny rubber boat.
Is that
Um,
just because of the number of boats in it?
Number of large,
Okay.
large boats and ferries, and there's no shore. It's like industrial, like
Walls. Yeah.
walls
Yeah, yeah.
everywhere. It's a big river. You feel it, but I mean, it's totally fine. But you definitely I never felt like, oh, this is so relaxing. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
who's coming which way, and do
Actually, I
they
really
see
like
me?
the idea that like you could just hop on these city electric bikes or normal bikes, cross the city, drop it at a location, walk to the
Yeah,
water, and then float back or paddle back down the river. Like that's
yeah.
really cool.
It's kind of a fun
Yeah, yeah,
multi-sport
yeah.
thing. So, and we get really cool little like adventurous trip reports from people all the time doing stuff like that. And that's just like kind of a weird out of the box
What do you
thing
think is
that's fun.
a common mistake people make when combining bikes and pack rafts? Like something that everybody seems to do.
Oh man, might stump me there.
Drop the boat and the bike in the water because they didn't strap it down right.
Yeah, the bike can be wet. Um, I think probably the biggest mistake that people do is I think they just try to just go do it before you do have. I think it's like bikepacking in general. There's an art to bikepacking
Hmm.
in a clean, minimalist way. And I think, not to say that you shouldn't just go have fun, but if you buy a bike and then just try to go like throw your ordinary like camping kit in it, you're going to be frustrated and feel like, everybody know that Bike Packs has a very curated set of gear that they understand
Sure. Yeah.
how it all works. And when you throw the boat in there, that's just like adding to the madness. And so if you haven't done that before, like figure it out in your living room before you try to
That's a
figure it
good
out in the
point.
field.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because it's now one less place you can stick a bag, or one less place you can pack other things, and you gotta be
Yeah.
kind of aware of where things are gonna go and how you're gonna do it, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of like I think there's a weird element about bike packing versus backpacking. Whereas backpacking, I've got my pack, And in
Yeah.
some ways, it's really nice because I can just keep shoving more stuff in. I say, it's too heavy. But for the most part, my pack will usually carry all the gear I plan to bring, and I'll figure it out. When every time I've gone bikepacking, I'm like, it doesn't quite carry all the gear I planned on or optimistically hoped that I could bring.
Right.
I've got to make some hard choices.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of leads me to another question. Sorry, my camera's doing some
Yeah.
autofocus for some reason. Let me see if I click it. It just stops doing it. I saw that there's the zippers on the back of your boats. Is
Yeah.
that storage, or how does that work? And
That is storage. So back when you asked like kind of one of our, what is our biggest sort of innovations thing, the thing that changed packrafting more than any other innovation is that zipper.
okay.
And I will take credit for it for Alpacka, but it's got a little bit more of a story than that. So in about 2010 or 11, a guy named Forrest McCarthy, kind of a fun guy, really adventurous pack rafter, and he was very close to my mom at the time, and he reached out to her and said, you know, we need a better way to store stuff because at the time there was no storage. You put your pack on the front of the boat, which really limited the
Right.
handling. Kind of like you were just as limited
Especially when you have
backpacking
like
as
small bags on a bike.
yeah. And so he said, what if we could put the gear inside the tubes? Like there's a ton of space in there. What if we could do that? And so that sent, that kind of like sparked the idea in my mom's mind. And she then went out and fortunately, this zipper already existed on the market. And
Okay.
so she found the zipper and was like, what if we try this? And she figured out. So she didn't come up with the idea of internal gear storage.
Hmm.
That was proposed by a customer, but she
Yeah.
solved how to do it
Cool.
using an existing product.
Thanks, Mom.
And yeah, so that really made a huge difference. And it's funny, that's one that if we could have patented would have been hugely beneficial for sort of like brand protection. But we didn't patent it, and it turned out we couldn't have patented it. So it's not a big deal because there was a Rocky Mountain Rafts that actually proposed it in putting it in a thwart of a raft in 2005 and never went through with it. But it's ubiquitous in pack rafting. It's an airtight, waterproof zipper that when you open it, you have access to the internal chamber inside the boat.
So when you open that zipper, the air
All
comes
the air
out?
would come out. Yeah. So
Oh,
this is
okay.
only when you're getting ready to go. This is not a use it on the water kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be very bad.
But
Do not pull this tab.
no, exactly. But it will, that, you can't even believe how much gear can go inside the tubes of a boat.
So
Like,
like you pretty much like literally have the whole way around to like stuff
yeah,
can just kind of tumble.
yeah. And so you can do a 2 or 3 week self-supported Grand Canyon trip with
That's
all of your gear
insane.
inside the tubes. Like when I've
Wow.
done
Okay.
Grand Canyon trips, I will sometimes bring 2 full-size pillows and shove them in the bow of the boat
Oh
because
man,
I
I
got,
always sleep better with my own pillow. Like, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So you can't do that with a bike, but now all your bike packing bags,
Yeah.
the frame bags, or not the main frame bag, but the handlebar bag and the seat
Hmm.
bag and all that stuff, they just come off and go right inside the tubes. And now they all store in there. And that's really nice because they stay dry and they keep the center of gravity low. And when you keep the center of gravity low, the boat's more stable
And do you have
and
to
performs
balance it,
better.
like try to put equal amounts on each side, I guess, to some degree?
Yeah, you want to put equal amounts left and right. You will,
Makes sense.
if you are like even moderately out of spec left to right,
Hmm.
you will feel it on the water. Like I can feel 5 pounds difference left to right.
Okay.
Front to back is less important, especially like on the narwhal as this big stern. You can put a lot of
Yeah,
weight in
when
the
you already got a
stern.
heavy bike on the front, you're probably not going to
Yeah,
notice an extra.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if you're paddling harder whitewater, not with a bike, there are people that are very sensitive to the front and back weight loading, but left and right is really the important one.
Cool, man. This sounds like a really It sounds like a fantastic way of changing how exploration is done. I mean, it's
just an alternative way to see things from a different angle. So
yeah.
in in remote parts of the world, it's a way to go to places that are totally unexplored
I was
and
going to ask, I
all
was literally just looking at that and saying, like, does this change how people approach wilderness? Because now all of a sudden it's like, well, it doesn't matter if there's no trail here because I can float to another trail, right?
pack rafting has fundamentally changed how people approach wilderness. It's really changed the Alaska backcountry. It's really, it's moderately changed. I would say Western Canadian backcountry. The New Zealand backcountry has been fully changed because of pack rafting.
Have you been in New Zealand at all? Or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's Alaska and New Zealand are 1A and 1B for pack rafting.
Yeah. I've always
Alaska,
said,
be,
like, New Zealand is like a miniature, micro-sized version of Canada. You know, we got the mountains, the fields, the
yeah,
deserts, the farming country. You got all those things. But man, like I spent 2 weeks there and it was phenomenal. Like
everything's phenomenal
I
there.
have to go on a bike
No, no,
next time
no,
I go with
wait,
a
never
bike.
mind. Nobody should go. It's the
That's
furthest
right.
spot of the world. It's expensive to get there.
Yeah, yeah.
The,
No, and I
you
heard
know,
they're really, really rude and mean and like,
yeah, they're
yeah.
super mean. The coffee's awful. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
no,
exactly it.
the game warden in New Zealand invited us to over to his house for a meal and to stay the night. I mean, that's how nice they are.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, a lot. New Zealand is just filled with beautiful, beautiful, clear backcountry rivers that are perfect for pack rafting.
That sounds cool.
And there's
If so,
cool,
go ahead.
there's really cool remote bike routes in New Zealand that you can link pack rafting with too. There's just, so much good stuff.
Yeah,
I
so
think
just
of
in
it
case
like,
people are listening, if you had enough problems making your own routes before,
yeah,
let's add water.
yeah, exactly.
Like challenge accepted, but it's a great way. I think it's
Yeah,
definitely like I have several friends. Like I mentioned, I have several friends with pack rafts, and they all speak super highly of it. It's just one of
that's
those things, huh?
I'm glad to
If
hear
people
it.
are curious, how can they? Where should they start? Like, what's the first step? I mean, because they're not cheap, so I don't know if there's rental agencies or if there's
There, there
place.
is backcountry pack raft rentals in Montana does
Uh,
a thorough rental business, and and the cool thing about his rental is a lot of our dealers do have rentals and demos, but backcountry pack raft rentals as a fully ship based program. Like sign
oh,
up,
okay.
he ships you the boat with a return label, you go do your trip, and you ship it back to him.
That's pretty
And since he's
neat.
now a full dealer of ours, I think he's got setups where like if you rent a boat, like you'll get a discount if you buy one through here, kind of thing. So
Okay.
that's a that's a good one if you want to go down the rental route
Yeah.
first. There is a robust for people who are like, I don't know how much I want to jump in. There's a pretty robust used market out there. Our boats hold their value really well, but that's you are going to pay a little bit more for a used one than you might think. But on the other hand, you're getting a really good boat, and then we offer super super thorough aftermarket care in terms of if you need repairs, if you need upgrades, all that kind of stuff. And then just giving us a call, telling us what you want to do, and we'll walk you through the right boat.
Yeah. And what is the process like in the inevitable possibility that something happens to the boat? Everything's fairly for the most part fixable, or is
Yeah, so our boats all have a lifetime warranty. Um, uh, and what that really means in principle is if there's something that's our fault, we're going to replace it for the life of the boat.
yeah?
If,
If you use the
but
bow of your boat as a cutting board, that's not a
yeah, exactly, exactly. Or, you put 300 days on your boat in the desert with no water and you wear the floor off of it, But and then so the things that are going to wear on your boat, if you have that internal storage zipper, the cargo fly zipper, those are a wear part like a chain on a bicycle. They should have a longer life than a chain, but they do wear. And so if you don't take care of it, you'll need to replace it more often. If you take really good care of it, it can last you several
and
years.
good care means like clean off the dirt,
Keep,
lube it once in a while.
yes, never cycle it when it's dirty. There's lubricant on it. I lubricate it. There's those instructions. I lubricate it every time I cycle it.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it's funny. I joke that it's like chapstick. I don't use chapstick at all, but my wife uses it every day, always. So every time she jumps in the car, she's like, "Hand me the chapstick," and she just keeps her
Right.
lips chapstick all the time. And you don't have to do that, but like I just consider it like, and just like chapstick, you don't put it on your teeth, you don't put it on the zipper teeth, you put it on the lips, and you put a thin layer. You don't glob it on there. So
Mm.
we send out these little cut up T-shirt cloths that come with it, and you kind of get the lubricant soaked on that, and so it's this kind of like greasy cloth.
Yeah.
And so I just use that to wipe the zipper down, and so that wipes all the dirt and the dust off it before, and then you open it, get your stuff out, and then close it, and then it's fine. And then the next morning when I have to put all my gear back in there, I wipe it down, open it, and then I brush all my gear off. I don't like just pull it out of the wet sand and shove it in there. It's just, kind of keeping care of it like that. They last a long time, but most people, what they do is I mean, our own employees, I watch them. We go on a pack rafting trip, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they're dragging the boat up on the beach, upside down, dragging the zipper through the sand, brush it off with their hand, and then I can still see clumps of sand. They're pulling the zipper. I'm just like, and then I
Like,
tell a
damn it,
repair guy,
Bob.
yeah, I tell Will, our repair guy, I'm like, if he comes in for a zipper replacement, I don't care if the employee, he's paying full price because I saw what he's doing to this thing. No, so yeah, so you will have to replace the zipper at some point in its life, but we offer that service. And then most punctures are repairable at home by yourself, but you can send it in and have us do it. Um, if any of your attachments tear out or wear out, or you know, you know, you, you hit a piece of rebar, or I mean,
Right.
we've had we've had somebody that didn't notice it, and they up over their backed up, and their boat was on the ground, and their car muffler ended up on top of it for like 10 minutes, and it like melted through it. And they sent it back to us, and we cut a huge patch and replaced and repaired it. So we take care of
Oh, okay.
people. And then if you do have some you know problem, or you do something and you totally destroy your boat, we usually will offer people a discounted replacement. We want people to stay in their boat.
How durable are they? Like, I mean, like, I'm not saying say what can you run into, because that's probably not how you want to test its durability. But like, if
Soup,
you're floating down and you run into like some pointy deadhead or something, or
they're super durable. They're low pressure and very slick and hard in the relative scheme of things. So when they hit a sharp object, they
hmm.
deform and slide over it rather
Oh,
than
okay.
puncture and cut. There are two exceptions to that. One is if you hit a super like randomly sharp object. So I used it. I have hit rebar once. I know several other people have hit You hit rebar in river, it's going to rip a hole in your boat. Sorry,
Sure.
period,
Yeah.
end of the story. Sticks are
Sorry,
not
buddy.
going to do a thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've hit one super sharp, like rock that just like for whatever reason just sliced my boat perfectly. In 25 years, it's the only time I've
Okay.
ever had a big cut in my boat.
That rock though was probably like had been hit by so many like
Oh,
God knows what
well,
floating down
who
water
knows?
that
Probably would cut your
sharpened it. Huh?
hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then the other is when you're packing, going back to your gear, and you're packing your gear inside the boat, you want your soft stuff down or outside, hard stuff up.
Right.
Because if you're carrying a large metal object like a fuel can or a pot, and that's on the outside, now you there's no give in the boat. And so
Oh,
now
right.
when you hit that rock, you've got rock metal boat, and the boat loses.
Right. Right. Right.
Whereas normally when that rock hits the boat deforms, slides around the rock, but now it hits the boat, but it really hits a pan.
Right.
And
Right. That makes sense.
yeah, so
Yeah. Good point.
you pinch flat it.
Yeah. Exactly. Essentially. Is there an important first skill to pack rafting? Like something you need to know?
You the boats themselves are so forgiving and so easy to paddle, but you do need a basic understanding of water safety. And
Mm.
going back to what I was saying about situational awareness, you need to know what is dangerous and what is not when it comes to water. And water's funny that way. It's not always intuitive what is dangerous or not. Um, there have been a handful of fatalities over the years in pack rafts. You'd be surprised, more than half of them are in large lakes.
Oh, okay. I thought it would have been rushing rivers.
You would think so, right? Because you're like, oh, it's a river, it looks dangerous. More than half of them have been large lakes in like mountainous areas and mountain valleys. And what you have when you have these old glacial lakes and big lakes like Patagonia kind of places is overnight the wind dies. It's you at 8 in the morning. It's flat calm.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. You get on your pack raft. There's an island 2 miles out there. You paddle out to the island.
Yeah, yeah.
Flat water. It's beautiful. You're looking at big glacial mountains and whatever this lake. You're sitting on the backside. You're eating lunch, and you don't even notice that the wind's starting to come up because it's the afternoon and the wind's starting to go. And by the time you leave, you're in the lee of the island, and as soon as you come around the corner and get exposed to that wind, if you're in a 20-knot wind, you've got white caps, you got chop,
Yeah, yeah.
and these people they get out in that, and then they flip, and their boat is super lightweight, and it blows away, and they drown because they're out in the middle of the lake with nothing to have
That's right.
happen. And it's just this sort of like you have to know what the dangers of the water
Mm-hmm.
are, and
And I feel
knowing,
like there's probably also people that are going to go in the whitewater rivers and stuff. They know how to swim. They know how to paddle.
yeah,
They're more aware of water skills. People
yes,
that don't know that say, "I'm going to go to the lake because it's soft, it's smooth, it's like easy."
exactly, and
Mm.
large bodies of so I would classify as like you know there's there's flat water, which can be still water or moving water in a
Yeah,
river. There's white water, and then there's what I would call open water. And
yeah,
open water, I think of as the ocean and really, really big lakes, bit like, the Great
yeah.
Lakes. Open water is incredibly dangerous. I'm
So
more
fun though.
intimidated by open water than rivers.
Yeah. I used
So
to do some
it's
triathlon. I loved open water swimming. Just so
yeah,
fun.
it's really cool.
But
But you
yeah,
definitely need a different skill set, and the safety equipment is 180 degrees.
we had
So
nothing.
yeah,
We didn't even have
in
the flotation things that
in
people use now. We're like,
whitewater,
oh,
every no, yeah, whatever. Yeah, in whitewater, the most some of the most dangerous thing that you can have is any kind of attachment to the boat or any kind of
mm,
strap or something hanging off you. Because if you have excess straps or weird stuff in whitewater and you fall out, those straps can get caught on things and you'll drown because you get hung up by that. So when you go to open water, now suddenly you're like the boat is your lifeline. And
right.
so you have to be like, do I need a paddle leash? Because you don't want to set down your paddle in the wind and go to grab something and have your paddle blow off your boat, and now you're
Mhm.
separated from your paddle. Do you want to actually leash yourself to the boat in case you do make a mistake and get flipped out? Well, if you're leashed to the boat in whitewater, you're going to die. If you're
Right.
leashed to the boat in open water, that might be the thing that saves your life. So there's just, for me, I'm talking about extremes here, but it's just
Obviously,
situational
it's
awareness,
extremes. Yeah.
understanding what you know, understanding what you don't know. But for the most part, like the cool thing about pack rafting is you start in easy, fun rivers that are really safe, relatively small, and you get on there with your bike and you cruise around and you're like, this is great. And you slowly build your skills up until you're comfortable.
Do you prefer the whitewater pack rafting or the like what you call it, still water, the flatter water?
Flat water. For having fun, I love whitewater. Whitewater is
Yeah.
amazing. For adventuring, I've had as bit amazing adventures on flat water as I have on whitewater.
Okay.
So,
And can you pack raft the Grand Canyon? Is that
oh yeah,
yeah?
yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds
I've
fun.
I've done it 5 or 6 times, I can't remember, pack rafting. Um, it's funny, third back to Roman Dial. People had pack
Guy.
rafted the Grand Canyon um, before, but Roman was the first person to do it permitted in a modern sense. And he won a lottery permit to go
Yeah.
for a Grand Canyon permit, and he carefully went through all the regulations, and there was nothing in the regulations that said you couldn't have a pack raft there. And he showed up at the put in at Lee's Ferry with all of his, required safety equipment and everything, and they really didn't want to let him go on that trip. They tried to not let him go. And he was like, these are the regulations. I meet all the regulations. And they ended up having to call up, the superintendent of the park to get them to say, you got to let him go. And for a few years after that, for about 4 years, probably till 2015, 16, the Park Service was very, very hesitant to, like, if you, they couldn't stop you because they hadn't changed the regs, but they didn't want pack rafters on the river.
Okay.
They were concerned that they were going to have rescues and other things. As pack rafting has grown and the boats have improved, and the Park Service has turned around 180 degrees. And they're like, we actually have some of the lowest rescue rates of anything with pack rafters.
Oh, wow.
And the lowest impacts on the river because you guys can't carry as much as the big rafting parties. You use smaller camps. We almost never have rescues. When we do, it's an easy rescue because you have all your stuff. And a handful of times when people have actually been in over their head and been like, oh, this is a little bit too intimidating big, they're in a pack raft. They walk out. They
That's
don't
right.
call the helicopter.
Yeah, they don't have to worry about like leaving their kit behind or something. You just
Yeah, so now when you go to check in, the Park Service is incredibly positive and supportive of pack rafting in the canyon.
Oh, that's very cool. Do you have a piece of gear you never leave behind when you're going on a pack rafting trip, other than the boat and paddle?
Oh my gosh. So I have a ever new titanium 4-liter pot. And I love it because I can put almost a gallon of water in it and boil water over a fire with it
Right.
for big backcountry trips. And I bought that like in um, the late 90s, and I took it on both big trips, and it's been with me. It's kind of one of these like dented, beat up pieces.
Right.
And I love that thing. You can't get them anymore. I used to troll eBay for them, could never find them. This is the funny story. So my dad has health problems. He's starting to get rid of some stuff, and so I went up to visit him, and he's having me like go through his stuff and help him move it out. And up in the rafters, in the box, is a brand new one of these that he
Oh,
bought
wow.
like 30 years ago, and I was
Yeah,
like, I want that. That's if I get one thing from you, I want this pot. And he looked at me like, what? Like,
of
I'm
all the
like,
things.
of all the things I own, like that's the one thing I want.
Yeah.
Because I've
Oh,
been
that's
terrified
amazing.
of losing it. Now I have a brand new one, a brand new spare.
So yeah, I wanted to ask you about, you're out of Colorado, right? I believe
Southwest Colorado. Yeah.
Southwest Colorado, and all your products are American made, right?
Yep. Everything's made in house. All the boats are made in house. Our material sourcing is about 90% still domestic. We're lucky our fabric still is all domestically sourced.
Even the fabric is
Even
domestically
the
made.
fabric is domestically
Oh, okay.
made.
I thought
Yeah.
that stuff's all made in China for sure.
No, and that's not common to the outdoor industry, and
Right.
not just has most of the manufacturing moved overseas for the outdoor industry, but most of the fabrics are also being made overseas. So, for example, if you wanted to make, let's just say you wanted to make any kind of waterproof, breathable garment,
Right.
um, even if you're not using Gore-Tex, you're using some other waterproof, breathable garment. Even if you want to actually do the sewing and the seam taping in the U.S., the fabric's going to come from Taiwan,
Yeah.
Korea, China, Vietnam, one of those four, you know, maybe something else, but it's almost always going to be Asian sourced.
Yeah. There's very few like bigger companies I can think of. Like I know Restrap in the UK, everything is in-house. Everything's sourced in the UK. Materials. I think the only thing they said is not is their zippers, because like a YKK zipper is still just the best zipper out there. And
Yep. And YKK is some US, some Japan, some China.
okay.
YKK has factories everywhere. We get a lot of YKK zippers, and I would say about a third of them are from US, a third of them from Canada, a third of them from Japan.
And I know you mentioned earlier about the cost of, like the cost of the kayaks and, how they're a little bit higher and whatnot. Like, how do you compete with some of the brands that are producing in China, and what kind of standout differences do you see between the two?
Yeah,
Or
that's
three
a
or
good
four?
question. Domestic manufacturing is not easy. I wouldn't say we stumbled into it. We started right about the time that a lot of manufacturing was moving. So there was still a fair amount of manufacturing in 2000 when we started here.
Right.
And my mom comes from the world of manufacturing and design. So she's not a business person, she's a designer and a maker. So she never thought about it from the perspective of, oh, I'll go have it made overseas.
Right.
And so we've just slowly grown as a domestic brand and domestic in-house manufacturing. And a lot of what we try to do is come up, like my main job at this here in terms of running the company is some of it is just coming up with the systems to make the boat manufacturing flow efficiently so that we can be competitive.
Okay.
Our boats do cost more than any other brand of packraft out there, but not so much more that it's crazy. So, you know, pretty much everything else, with the exception of one European brand that I know of, is not just made in Asia, it's made in China.
Mm.
The quality of manufacturing is moderately decent. The quality of materials ranges. Nobody's got our materials. None of our competitors have materials that last. They've all got to cut somewhere in order to be competitive, because they can't offer a boat at the same price as ours, because people will generally choose our brand, our
Right.
quality, and sort of our name recognition. Most of our competitors are choosing to come in at a lower price point. The way we try to stay competitive is through kind of our sales operation. 70 to 80% of our boats are direct to consumer sales, direct through our
Oh, okay.
website, and only about 30% are dealer. And so our blended margin can stay relatively high. Let's
Yeah.
just
If it was
to
all dealer, then you'd be selling at a much lower price point, so you wouldn't cover your margins as much, right?
exactly, and so we'd actually have to run higher prices. So just keep round numbers for people understanding. I don't think I'm giving away any secrets to the outdoor industry. Bikes are a little bit different because bikes are hard goods,
Yeah.
but in generally outdoor industry and soft goods, if you have an item that costs $1,000, it probably wholesales for $500 to $600.
Yeah.
50% is a relatively high margin. 40% is kind of like the standard margin. Below 40s, I mean, so I see a lot of 40 to 45% out there.
Yeah.
And then the price that company, if they didn't manufacture it, which is common, they're probably paying another 40 or 50% margin below that. So the item that was $1,000, the brand that's behind it probably paid $250 for that
Okay.
landed cost from their factory in Asia. And now that factory had to make money too. So the factory had to build the boat for, or whatever it is, and make a profit at $250. Our margins are much tighter than that. So we're typically offering dealers in the range of a 30 to 40% margin. And then our margin beyond that is much lower. Like we don't have a very big gap between
Yeah.
what we're offering dealers. So I really view dealer sales as like brand promotional stuff. We're going to make a little bit of money on it, but not very much. We still need to make our overall margin on D2C, which is why I can't have 60% of our sales going through dealers. We couldn't be profitable at that. We'd have
And
to
that's a
raise our
conscious
prices.
and that's a conscious decision, because you want to keep production in the US. You want to have that standard that fits
Yeah,
what your company was always meant to be, right?
Yeah, it's hard because I want to meet everybody's needs. I want to support dealers. I know they're working hard and it's not easy to make money being a dealer.
Hmm.
But at the same point, I do need to make money, otherwise we go under. And so I'm looking at saying, do I make this boat $2,000 and then sell it to the dealer for 1,200, and then I get 700, it only costs me 700 to make, or do I want to make the boat that cost me $1,000 to make $2,000, and the dealer pays 1,200 or 1,300 for it or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I compress those margins down. But when I do that, so the boat that the if my competitor is buying a boat from China for 250 and retailing it for 1,000 and selling it to their dealer for 600, the boat that I'm selling for $1,000 is probably costing me closer to $500 to make.
Right. Yeah.
But you as the end customer are getting a $500 product, base price versus a $250 base price.
That's right. You're getting
And that's
twice
where
the quality or twice whatever you want to say.
that's where the huge difference in quality comes out. Now, it's
That
not
makes sense.
quite that big of a gap, but that's kind of like that's where my pricing always comes into it, is I'm trying to be around 20 to 30% above our competitors, but offering more than that 20 to 30% in value.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just and wages have been painful
Yeah.
last few years. It's a really hard business environment for anybody, including made in USA manufacturer the last
Yeah.
6 years. Sales went way up. COVID brought crazy sales, and that was great. And our sales really didn't fall off that much afterwards because packrafting continues to be a growing sport.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. But where we've seen pressure is our raw material prices have gone way up, even though our final prices to the consumer haven't gone up that much.
That makes sense.
I've tried to keep up and increase employee wages, not as much as I'd like to. What the bummer is my employees make quite a bit more at a raw numbers level than they did 6 years ago. But in terms of how far
Yeah,
their
the
money
cost
goes,
of living
it's
has killed everything.
not as far.
Yeah,
So I know
we found it hard too here in Canada. Like Canada's always been a more expensive country in many ways,
Yep.
Unless you're living like in San Francisco or something.
Yeah.
But it's just been so expensive. It's just like my wife and I do well. Like she works in tech. I'm a teacher. Teachers
Yep.
are paid well in Canada, but man, I can see how much other families are struggling because I teach a lot of kids that are not from as wealthy families, and
Totally. And our employees, we pay them well. They do well. The
how many
upside for
people do you
them is
employ?
46 now.
Okay, nice.
Pretty good sized little business here. I think we're the largest employer in town. We're one of the best paying jobs in the county. And we try to have a really, really flexible work environment.
Yeah.
I come from a white collar work environment. I was a lawyer for 9 years.
Oh, wow, okay.
There's things I didn't like about that, but I really liked the flexibility. You're gonna laugh. In some ways, being a lawyer is you're definitely chained to the desk in some ways, but chained to the desk only because you have so much work, not because
That's
I had
right.
a person demanding that I was there and saying, you walked in the door at 8:12. They don't care when I walk. They never cared when I walked in the door and when I walked out. They cared whether I got my work done, which is a lot of
Yeah.
work. I like that. And so we try to have our employees have a completely flexible work environment. Your kid's got a
Nice.
soccer game, you don't have to ask anybody, you just leave.
Yeah, my
Go
schedule's
to their
pretty
game.
fixed.
Yeah, I know in the teacher world for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of our employees actually come to us from much more rigid environments. Food service is really difficult. If when the restaurant's open, the employees have to be there.
That's right.
But I have employees that are here at 6 a.m. and leave at noon, and employees that don't show up till 2 p.m. and they leave at 8 p.m.
Oh, okay.
And
Wow,
they just
cool.
kind of, they work.
They get their hours, they get their work, they do what they need to do.
Exactly. That's the most important thing, is that they get their work done in a professional and timely way so that the next guy in the production line has work to do.
Yeah.
But if they have something going on that has them coming to work early or work late, it's no bother to me.
That's cool, man. Awesome. Well, thanks for
Yeah.
clearing up some of those misconceptions about North American versus Asian builds and production and how things work. That's so cool, man. I thanks. I don't know what else to ask you. If there's something I missed that you wanted to chat
No,
about.
this is super fun conversation.
It's been really fun. It's really new and interesting for me. So I was super stoked, and I'm really glad that we could make this happen.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks for being on the podcast, and we'll talk soon.
Great to be on.
And that wraps up another episode of the Bikepack Adventures Podcast. If there's one thing to take away from today's conversation, it's that adventure isn't limited by terrain, it's expanded by creativity. And sometimes all it takes is looking at a river not as an obstacle, but as a pathway. Huge thanks to Thor for sharing his story and giving us a deeper look into the world of packrafting. If you'd enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who's always looking for a new way to explore. You can learn more about Alpacka Raft and follow along with their work through the links in the show notes. And as always, if you've got a bike or route that tells a story, I want to hear it. Thanks for riding along. Until next time, keep on pedaling and maybe paddling too.